Right, nature-based climate solutions, our topic this morning. And just before we get into it and bring in our guests, let's take this background report put together by Timothy Yusuf.
World Environment Day, observed June 5 annually, centers key issues of climate change and environment. This year, land restoration, desertification and drought resilience is at the core of the campaign. Experts say nature-based solutions (NBS) are the most cost-effective and scalable tools to addressing climate change. Nature-based solutions, they emphasize, can deliver 37% of cost-effective carbon dioxide mitigation needed by 2030 to limit warming to 2 degrees centigrade. For Nigeria, nature-based solutions directly aligned with 2026 Parallel Focus, International Year of the Woman Farmer. This is against the backdrop that women, according to analysts, manage most smallholder farms and are central to agroforestry, soil restoration and dairy systems that double as carbon sinks. So far, global recognition of NBS is high, with policy mentions in Nigeria's major climate projects. Funding, land rights and monitoring, however, remain major gaps, as findings show that only 3% of climate finance flows to NBS. On why NBS matters, analysts believe that 40% of world's land is degraded, affecting 3.2 billion people. In Nigeria, 11 northern states face desertification, while coastal states battle erosion. World Environment Day 2026 is not symbolic, it's a policy checkpoint for countries to show progress on UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030. For more, over now to our guests in the studio.
Many thanks, Timothy, for the background report. Now joining us for a conversation right here on nature-based solutions for climate change is Professor Innocent Bariko, Director General, National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, Nigeria. Many thanks for joining us, Prof.
Thank you, madam. Good to see you. Good morning, Nigerians.
One more.
All right. Our guest joining us via Zoom. You want to introduce that, Victor?
Just go ahead.
All right. Also joining us for the conversation via Zoom from London, we have Professor Chukwumerije Okereke, President, Society for Planet and Prosperity, Nigeria, and visiting professor at the London School of Economics. A pleasure to have you, Prof.
Good to be here. Thank you.
All right, we have two profs in the house as we speak, but let's begin with the in-house prof. And when people hear climate change, they often think of technology, they think of renewable energy or global agreements. What exactly does it mean when we say nature-based climate solutions? What exactly does it mean?
Okay, you recall that in quite recent times, the world has been concerned about rising temperatures and all that in the environment. And these rising temperatures have what has contributed to what we have today as the climate problem. And so as part of the response to climate action, is the research has shown that nature-based solutions, amongst others, are also part of the solutions that we could deploy to address climate change problems. And so when we talk about nature-based solutions, we are talking about responses to climate change that border on depending on natural processes, protecting biodiversity, protecting and responding to environmental issues with the natural processes like ensuring and protecting biodiversity, ensuring and preventing flood through natural processes. For example, protecting biodiversity by ensuring that in your ecosystems, every ecosystem, like the wetlands, for example, you ensure that wetlands are sustained Because when wetlands are not sustained, you are giving room for flooding. You're also giving room for things like erosion and all that. So the ecosystems we have made that nature has provided, it is our responsibility to protect them. It is our responsibility to ensure that there is no, because the issues of climate change are the product of human activity, distorting the environment. And so this is distortion that and addressing of those things that border on the natural processes, using natural processes like tree planting, for example, are some of the nature-based solutions that we are focusing on this year's World Environment Day. Using this opportunity to attempt to look at how we could use nature-based solutions to address climate change. First, we think that besides nature-based solutions, we also have engineering alternatives, but we are focusing, the United Nations this year is looking at nature-based solutions. And nature-based solutions, like I mentioned, is basically responding to climate change by addressing nature in a natural form. Tree planting is a typical example. So we go out, we ensure that we don't expose, promote afforestation by planting trees. You know, that is not to say that you could not also address flooding or erosion through other engineering measures. But planting, and it covers the ecosystem and ensures that the ecosystem is not exposed to flooding, erosion, and then aggravate the climate change challenges.
All right. Many thanks, DG, for your opening comments. Quickly want to introduce another guest who is joining us via Zoom, Dr. Nkiruka Chidia Madweke, the Special Presidential Envoy on Climate Change and the State Project Coordinator, Abia New Map, AIB. Many thanks for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you so much for having me on this conversation. And good morning, Professor DG.
Good
All
morning,
right,
madam. Good to see you.
All right, Dr. Maduka, we'll get back to you shortly, but I would like to remain with the DG right here in the studio. You say nature-based solutions. I'm thinking are nature-based solutions being promoted because they're effective or because they are politically easier than making difficult decisions on emissions and environmental regulations?
Well, first and foremost, we could say they are cheaper. They are cheaper, and they are approaches that any person can use, especially considering the fact that engineering alternatives are not available at all levels. For example, in my village, for example, where the ordinary person may not be able to quickly get to an engineering alternative, and there's erosion affecting maybe a farm area and all that. I mean, it becomes easier to educate the people to say, look, plant. If you plant trees here, it will help and all that. So for one to say that there is cheaper as opposed to the general alternative, but it's not to say that regulations don't cover nature-based alternatives. For example, in Ezra, we have regulations that protect wetlands. There are regulations that guide against erosion. There are regulations on different aspects of biodiversity.
But the next question will be, how effective will these regulations be? Because we still have these issues with us.
Yeah, the effectiveness of these regulations has to do with enforcement. It has to do with enforcement. And so when the regulations on their own cannot be effective without enforcement. But the point I'm drawing to the fore is the fact that nature-based solutions are more available, they are more accessible, they are also cheaper to address. That is not to say that they are not part of our regulations, they are also part of our regulations.
So from what you're saying, will it be safe to say that nature-based solutions can realistically compete with economic pressures driving logging, mining, and urban expansion?
Yeah, it may not compete sufficiently because of the speed with which some of those things are taking place. And I understand that to mean that you say nature-based solutions, if you get to a rural area where logging is taking place on a very fast speed, the other alternative is actually to plant. And we encourage, for every tree you take away, then plant another one. You know, because that's the only way. you can handle that aspect of maintaining biodiversity. That is not to say that other issues of climate change, you remember we're talking about green technology, we are talking about other solar and all that in the present circumstance also to deal with the issue of climate change. But we are talking about, at this point, we're talking about nature-based solutions. And we are saying that it has its own weaknesses. It is not a total solution to the problem. That's the point.
All right. Thank you, Prof. Let's get to another Prof this time, Professor Okereke. Now, Prof, you've been involved in global climate policy discussions. So just how important are nature-based solutions to the problem of climate change? Of course, considering the fact that climate change itself is also a nature-based problem.
That's a good question. How important are they? They are extremely important. One of the challenges that we face in addressing societal problems is always the tendency to assume that the more technical, the more Western, the better. And this is a false solution and false mindset. When I travel around the world, I talk about the fact that when I was growing, there was a lot of traditional behaviors, practices that actually promoted biodiversity conservation, climate mitigation, food security, water scarcity, and disease. And Professor Baido has been giving you a long list of those. Those days, when we finish cooking with the firewood in the Obanku village where I come from, my mom and my grandmom makes us to collect the ash from the cooking, and then we pour those ash into the farm nearby using natural soil to improve fertility and to make the
All right.
Are we having a problem with this audio?
It's a connection issue, looks like. With Professor Okereke, we hope we can establish connection with you right there in London.
We'll take the same question to
Dr. Madwekwe. Okay, Professor Okereke is back. Let's hear you, Prof.
Oh, good. Well, let me conclude by saying that you don't have to choose technical or nature-based solution. You can combine those. Dr. Nkiruka will speak a bit more about that because in the NewMap project, which I'm very, very familiar with, you're combining engineering design to mitigate flood with ecosystem and biological diversity management through the planting of trees, agroforestry, etc. So you don't have to choose one or the other. I want to make this point seriously before I go. It is not the case that the more sophisticated the solution, the better. We can, as Professor Baido has said, use a lot of very simple, natural processes to help to solve societal problems while also improving livelihood and well-being.
You know, for those of us not in the environment space, you know, hearing the nature-based solutions and, of course, reforestation being one of it, what comes to mind is that is it not contradictory, you know, to be focusing on reforestation when our forests are being, if you like, if our forests are disappearing at the moment? So how does this work? If at the moment we can't even see our forest anymore, so how can this solve the problem?
Oh, yeah, your point is very, very valid. Actually, there's no contradiction. The point is that we shouldn't be allowing our forests to disappear, which then leads to drought, desertification, and increase in temperature, and then come back and be begging for money to do nature-based solutions to solve these problems. It is easier and better to protect what you have than to allow what you have to disappear, and then you come asking for more money to solve the problem. Nigeria has lost nearly 62% of its forest cover from the time we got independence to now, and the problem is not abating. I have some of my research assistants that, as you said, just went to Cross River last week, and then they found growing alarming rate of deforestation. So we need to conserve our forests. Agroforestry, mangrove restoration, wetland restoration, wetland conservation, but also urban green infrastructure. Just planting trees around Abuja, the NTA axis where you are sitting, can help to reduce temperature by up to 2 degrees, both at noon and at night. So we shouldn't wring our hands and pretend that there's nothing we can do, that only when we get, big money from the rich countries, that's the only time that we can do something to solve our societal problems.
For your intervention so far, we'll get back to you in the course of this conversation. Now, let me get to Dr. Nkiruka Chidi Amaduekwe. In your experience, where is the place for nature-based solutions to climate change in Nigeria?
Again, the studio, thank you for this opportunity to be part of this conversation. I wanted to address the concern that I heard, which is, are we not talking about two different things, or is there conflict in the conversation? Nature-based solution is just basically using nature to address climate issues. So you're not fighting against nature. One, it is low cost. It is something that, like Professor Kirike has said, it's something that we have been doing in our culture, right? And so it's so easy peasy. So you're not saying, yes, we know that climate issues are nature issues, right? But please, I want to state this clearly. The reason why we're having climate change is because of human activities, more human activities than nature itself. So now for countries like Nigeria, where you're rich in natural systems, right? You're being encouraged to harness what you have and really amp up on your nature solutions. Why? Because you're actually rich in that resource. And if you look at the Climate Change Act, the Climate Change Act actually addresses two things. It addresses nature-based solutions as one of the solutions Nigeria has identified. It also has addressed something known as natural capital systems. Now imagine if we put a price to our nature, then we will not only be gaining revenue, but we'll also be enforcing behaviors. Because one of the things about nature-based solutions is that it has to be community-owned. Let me use an example. So a new map, like Professor said, we do both structural and non-structural bioengineering. So we found that it's not just doing civil works to help remediate gully erosions, but also plant grasses like vetiver. Now let me tell you one thing we have found out. We found out that even after we have planted these vetiver grasses, that the community will go and burn them. So when you burn our erosion control system, the natural one, what do you expect? Because the thing about vetiver is that it's not only long-rooted, it also helps to reduce the flow of water. Another thing again we've seen, which is something that can actually be addressed really, is people building houses on flood lines and on flood paths. Water never forgets its path. How hard is it for town planners and estate builders to ensure that these things are properly addressed? Now we're talking about the rainy season and all of us are experiencing it, right? We're experiencing the flooding. Imagine if we had more green areas. Imagine if every estate developer is mandated to have a certain percentage of their estate as green areas rather than pure concrete. So when you have concrete, it actually encourages runoff and encourages erosion and encourages flooding. So let's have more green areas. And there's something Professor said, which is that it also increases the cooling system. One thing about Africa, Nigeria, is that when you're talking about climate change, is that we're going to have increasing temperature. So, for instance, a city like Bonn, right? A city like Bonn has more trees than buildings actually. And I asked, how did this happen? Was it organic? I was told that they had to actually plant those trees. They had to be intentional. So can we be intentional in our cities like Umuahia, in our cities like Aba, in our cities like Abuja, in our cities like Lagos? I think they've lost me anyway. But I'm simply saying that these are very simple things that are very low cost. And please, we're not contradicting ourselves. It's just basically using what you have to resolve the gross issues that you're dealing with. And for us as a country, we're already rich in natural systems. Can we up on it? And very important, I'm happy that my brother, the DG Nezra is there. Enforceable, it has to be enforced. Yes, Nezra has regulations, but we have to be able to enforce it. The Climate Change Act in section 34 says that if anybody is anybody can bring issues to court, that is when you're doing actions that affect climate change or environmental issues. I am yet to see anybody raise that issue at all, and that's something that we might have to start considering. Can we start using the judicial system to address these climate issues that we're dealing with? So nature-based solutions is important for us as a country, that we are rich in natural systems.
And clear, and thank you for your contribution. But you see, as I was listening to you, I'm thinking that how do we differentiate between genuine climate action from greenwashing? All right, because the concern will be how much carbon can Nigeria realistically remove through nature-based solutions compared to emissions from industry, transport, and oil and gas companies?
So that's a very good question. I love it, which is greenwashing. So one thing that I had pursued while I was the DG NCCC was the need for us to have a policy on climate finance. So that climate finance strategy policy will be very clear as to what exactly would clarify as climate solutions, and we'll be able to tag finance to it. So this will actually help us address greenwashing. Number one. Number two is tracking. So we have forest cover, like Professor has said. But one thing about it is that we're fast losing it because we're not geotagging our trees. So when we start geotagging our trees, we will be able to track and know how many trees are here. I mean, I don't mean shrubs, I mean trees. And when you geotag your trees, you'll be able to know which one has gone. So somebody cannot tell you, oh, we have so hectares and we are getting carbon credits for them. You have to be able to track. You have to be able to monitor. You have to be able to verify. And that's why for you to even have a sustainable carbon market in Nigeria, you must have a good monitoring, verification, reporting system, MRV system. Unfortunately, we don't have that yet. And I believe we're working towards that. You must have a carbon rate. Everything that you're doing. I believe that we're on track to do that. In addition to the regulation, we must have a carbon market regulation. Yes, we have the framework, but we must have the carbon market regulation that says who exactly has the right to the carbon and what exactly qualifies as this. That way, madam, we'll be able to address very important concern of greenwashing, because we see that happening in the Western country, but we can't have that in Nigeria. Thank you.
Madwike. But you see, there's a House of Representatives investigation in 2023 which examined expenditures from 2015 onward and reported that about 81.2 billion naira was spent on planting 21 million trees across 11 frontline states. You can fact check that. The question will be now, we're talking about trees again, planting trees again. Yeah. If billions have been spent, why is there still desertification in the northern part of this country? The question is, where did the money go? How do we measure success when we talk about tree planting? Is it about the number of trees we plant or the number of trees that survive after a number of years?
Yes, sir.
To me, right?
Go ahead.
Okay, now, I think that that kind of money spent on tree planting, in terms of assessment, will be assessed on the basis of the number of trees planted. However, it's also important to ask the question, how many survived? And that's where it's important for monitoring and monitoring of such policies, to ensure that when once trees are planted, it is monitored. These trees are planted by agencies, government agencies, and so monitoring is key to ensure that these trees survive. And so when you talk about, there's no other way to measure or the use of or the funding than the number of trees planted. But what is key is to ensure that these trees are monitored from when they are planted and nurtured and ensure that they survive. Because this is what is also done in other climes. And it is also valued along that line. Now, it's also difficult to say we need to know when you are talking about planting of trees. Remember, there's a line. The northern part of the country is basically the areas where this kind of investment is going on.
It's actually the Great Green Wall Initiative. That's that's the program.
Exactly.
And that's the amount that was spent within that period. But
exactly.
Are we seeing the impact?
You can't stay here and not see the impact. You must go to the places where this has been done. You will see the impact. If you go to the field, you see the impact.
I was speaking with a senator representing a particular constituency in Jigawa, and he was raising the same question about desertification and drought.
Yes.
So if you say there's impact, why are there still concerns?
This impact you're calculating will not come in one year. The expenditure will not be, you can't use a 1 year expenditure to calculate your impact for desertification that has taken place over the years, and a continuous process of human activity that is continuing to affect the environment. There's no how you use a 1 year budget to address that problem.
Now, Dr. Madwikwe talked about green areas, she talked about tree planting, and I'm asking, who monitors, the erosion of green areas in Abuja where we are? Abuja is perhaps the only planned city, and, all these things are stipulated, you have them in the master plan. But in recent times, what you see, even close to NTA here, you see even the center of the road that is just meant to be green because it's wide is now housing a filling station, housing, a mall, and all of those. The center of a road just behind NTA here. Yeah. So how much does Nigeria do to ensure that even the one we have is not eroded?
Yeah, it's important to understand that the environment is a space where different agencies play, and we have our mandates. The main responsibility of MINESRA, as the mandate gives, is to enforce government policies on environment, maintain standards, and by virtue of enforcing government policies, programs, and policies on environment, we also enforce government international agreements and protocols and conventions of government. Now, in doing so, there are other agencies in that space. If you talk about beautification, the local government also have roles to play, especially in the urban city of Abuja. When you talk about the beautification areas, FCD has roles to play. There are powers, so no agency runs into the mandate of another agency. When you talk about sanitation belongs to the local government. That's the responsibility of local governments. You see, so every agency have their mandate. For Nigeria, our responsibility is to ensure that environmental standards are maintained. And that's where we do through the regulations on the various, and we ensure that we follow these regulations, because that's where the standards are defined. That's where the environmental standards are defined. If, for example, you're dealing with a regulation on biodiversity, it tells you what biodiversity is and how the quality. You are dealing with noise, for example. It tells you what the decibel of noise should be at different parts of the city. And so, if it's an industrial section, it will certainly be different from the living section. These are standards. So for us, we establish standards, we maintain standards, we follow these standards, and so we enforce them. And even in the construction area, quarrying and all that, we ensure that they follow the rules, the regulations as it states, so that certain things don't happen within that space.
What about building of green areas, for instance, that I talked about?
Yeah, if the building of green areas, we will be concerned with building of green areas, but the city authority who defines the green areas will also be involved in that. We'll also be concerned with building on waterways. We will come in and draw attention to those issues and enforce those issues.
Because it's when government leads the way, then people can follow. Yes. If government gives allocation, for instance, because I would like to think like that, if you see people building up green areas, these things don't happen without government approval. Yes. So if government is building up green areas, reclaiming places that shouldn't have buildings, how do the people follow? How are we going to win the climate war in Nigeria?
Yeah, and that's why we are saying that the climate action is something every person needs to be involved, whether government, whether individual, institutions, and it's something that has to go with both education and enlightenment and all that. And all this we do. But it's important that the more we understand it from our different perspectives and from our different mandates and roles we play, the better for the system. And the more synergy we will be able to build in trying to avert the problem. But the truth is that actually that we must understand that the various departments of government have specific rules. These rules dovetail into one another. And where the other one stops is where the other one begins. And it is the synergy between these agencies and government departments that will enable us to address some of those issues.
All right, thank you.
Those issues are not addressed by one agency alone.
Thank you very much, DG. Let's return to Professor Okereke. Earlier when you spoke, you talked about funds for, all of this. And, when we talk about finance, I'm just wondering if we're truly serious about the effect of climate change in this country. I did quote figures that was spent in the Great Green Wall Project. And there's also a report that Nigeria received around $5 billion in climate finance between 2015 and 2021. Yet, we still have deforestation with us, we still have erosion, we still have flooding. I mean, the issues have remained, or if you like, have even become worse. Professor Okereke, I'm asking you, do you think that the nature-based solutions will be anything different? Do you think that this is the game changer for us? Or if you like, this is the solution we'll be looking for all along?
I'm sad to say that it will not be anything different unless we change our approach. You use the word, are we serious? Well, having worked in this space for over 30 years, I think that there is most times, a lot more words than action. I think there's a lot more heat than light. I think there's a lot more policy statements than implementation. You talked about the huge amount of money spent on the Great Green Wall. Let me give you another statistics. In 2017, Nigeria became one of the first countries in the world to raise what we call green bond. In that exercise, 10.69 billion naira was raised, equivalent to about 30 billion US dollar. It was used mostly for planting trees, but also for some renewable energy projects. Research has shown, those who have gone back to where those trees have been planted have shown that many of them have died. They have not survived. Nobody have cared for them. Termites have eaten up a huge number of them. Communities have not been involved in their management, as Nkiri was saying earlier on, that you need community buy-in. Are we serious? I am not always sure. We have some of the best laws. Dr. Madueke has talked about the Climate Change Act, which I basically wrote most of it. And I was expecting that the implementation of the Climate Change Act will transform our approach to climate management and governance in the country. It hasn't, to be honest. Again, a lot of steps, a lot of good policies, but we are lacking effort in implementation. And the point that the other professor in the studio has made is very crucial. There needs to be much more governmental integration. Synergy across governmental agencies is required. And that was one of the reasons that we created a National Council for Climate Change, because we thought that this is no longer an environmental issue, that we need someone or some team working together with the presidency to bring about the synergy, so that if NESRA makes standard, then the city council will be obliged to implement them. And that the city council can also yield information to NESRA that can help it to change or revise its standard. At the moment, there is still a lot of silo-based work. Ministry of Environment is doing their thing, Ministry of Power is doing their thing, City Council is doing their thing, NESRA is doing its thing. There needs to be more integration and more synergy. I think that without that, we will struggle to solve this problem. One of the things that is very distinctive about climate change, it is that it's both an agricultural problem, it's a flooding problem, it's an energy problem, it's a transportation problem, it's a security problem, and you can go on. Without synergy, without integration, and a solid drive towards implementation, I doubt that we will get a good handle of this problem.
Let me get back to Dr. Nkiruka Madwekwe. I need you to speak, you alluded to it a bit earlier, but I need you to speak a bit more on the link between erosion control, flood control, and nature-based solutions.
Very much. Again, so my hat.
Are we having a problem?
Well, I'm not.
Okay.
Hello? Am I
Go ahead,
audible?
please. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. So to your question, the hat I'm currently wearing means that I have to be able to, oh dear God. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, thank you.
Please continue.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm saying that the hat I'm wearing currently at the moment means that we are, just to bring in context, Abia State, just because of our soil, we are vulnerable to erosion because of how our soil is. And so with the new map project, the idea is to ensure that we bring both structural, which is civil works, earthworks, structural engineering works, and then nature-based solutions, that's non-structural. And that's the focus of the European Investment Bank phase that we're in, past the World Bank phase that NewMap originally was on. So what we're looking at is how do you use vetiver, which is what was done in the World Bank phase, but more, which will be drilled in more in this phase. How do you use grasses like vetiver? How do you use long, trees to help to structure and bring remediation to the gullies that we're dealing with? And then how do you now get the community? Because that's one thing, I don't know if you remember me hearing say that early on, that community needs to own this process. If the community understands that when we plant those trees, when we plant those grasses, vetiver, when we plant the vetivers, that they will not go and burn them, that they will not go and cut the trees they won't plant it, they won't cut the trees for firewood and all that, then we'll find out that these things will be able to bring sustainability, because there's the question, addressing the question that was asked, which is the 81.2 billion and other things that were mentioned with the green bond, is sustainability. We found out that because these things are not community owned, and you bring in solutions without asking the community, what exactly how do you want us to solve this problem? When the community tells you how they want you to solve a problem, and they own it from the design stage to the implementation stage, you find out that it will be able to last. There will be sustainability. And those are the challenges we saw in the past phase, that communities are not owning these things. And also for the trees as well. Nigeria is not the only country that has had an issue with having planted trees and seeing that the trees didn't grow back. Indonesia, for instance, Indonesia has, they were looking at the statistics of the mangrove restoration that they had done. They had planted billions or millions of mangrove, and they found that going back again, those trees did not survive. Why? Because they were not they were not community based. They were not. Sometimes you don't even use the trees or the native to those regions, and you're not even asking what exactly this tree that we are planting, is it what the community needs? So how do we move forward? This is the challenge. What is the next step for us? I think for us, the next step is to bring in community. Is what is called co-creating. We need to stop doing top-bottom approach to bottom-top approach to our challenge, to the climate challenge. Meaning that it needs to be co-created. We need to co-create our solutions with the communities that are most affected. One thing that I've seen with the New Map project, it has allowed me to now really understand that apart from working at the policy level, which is at the National Council on Climate Change, I'm now able to work with the communities to now see that indeed climate change is at the state level, is at the local government level. I'm looking at the pictures you're putting of erosions. If you see the massive erosions that we have to deal with, it is mind-blowing. These are things that are affecting livelihoods, communities, cutting off communities from another community. People are losing their homes, people are losing their families. These are real life issues. So it's not a conversation of just paper. These are real life issues. So how do we deal with this real life issue? Co-creation, enforceability. It has to be something that is local knowledge, not imported. And like we have talked about dealing with the gully erosions, structural and not structural. But please, I will keep on saying this. It has to be co-created solutions. Thank you. And again, forgive me, I wanted to add one more thing. Aggressive education. One of the challenges we've seen is that people don't even understand what we are doing while we are doing it. And I want to bring in a challenge. One of the things we saw in our gullies is that people use it to dump waste, thinking that by dumping your waste in the gullies, you're reducing the gully expansion, not knowing that just putting your waste in the gully, you're actually creating more issues and bringing more erosion fingers and all that. People need to be educated, and that's where the Ministry of Education is very important, and that's where basic education is very important. One of the things we've seen happen in the Western world to tackling climate change is that even the child who is 3 years old is starting to know what climate change is. Can we bring this to our country? Can we bring this to the grassroots? Can we take this down to where it matters? Education cannot be overemphasized. Aggressive education is very, very important. And of course, NTA, media, what you're doing is very fantastic. What you're doing is actually called education. Can we have more of it? One of the things we've seen is that we are speaking a lot of English. We're not speaking Igbo. We're not speaking Hausa. We're not speaking Yoruba. We're not speaking Fulfulde. We're not speaking the different Igala. We're not speaking the languages. Can we bring this down to the language that we understand, even if it's Pidgin? So let us stop the English that we are speaking and bring it down to the local language that the people understand. Can we even do infographics, pictures that people understand? That is part of education, and that's where the media is very important. You cannot talk about addressing climate change or nature-based climate solution without the media. And of course, NTA, who can beat the rich, you're actually doing exactly that. So thank you very much.
Dr. Madueke, for your kind words. By the way, I would like our viewers to know they can be part of this conversation. There's a number on the screen. Feel free to send your SMS or WhatsApp messages. Our guest would respond to your concerns. Dr. Madueke, I'd like to stay with you because you say it's a bottom-top approach. And I'm wondering if it's really bottom-top because you want to ask if government is really committed to this drive you know, restoring our lands and stopping climate change somehow. I'm asking that because we see that wetlands are being destroyed for urban development, and who is responsible for that? Government. Isn't government undermining its own climate goals? Is it just about attending COP with all the, with all the clouds that we get to, I don't know, I don't know the right words to use, but of course, you've been to COP a number of times, and you see what happens when Nigeria, go for that jamboree, or is it a fun fair? I don't know, because what comes back at the end of the day? So speak to us. Is government truly committed in all of this? Is it just about the communities alone?
I want to
Dr. Madueke, of course, I would love you to respond to that question, in particular. Maybe I'll get to the DG. Yeah. Maybe you want to respond to the commitment of government.
Yeah, I want to say that government is committed. Government is committed to...
Well, you heard Victor raise concerns that even in Abuja, that is a planned city, we see green areas being converted to
the opposite.
All sorts. Filling station, supermarkets and all.
The opposite of your argument is also that development will not take place. But what is important is that in the course of developing, that's the essence of the challenge to climate change, is that there must be a strategic planning in such a manner that while you are carrying out development, let's give you an example. Let's assume that you want to develop a gully area. You can get into the place and turn it into, you can do everything you want to do there and turn that gully area into a tourist attraction. So there are other ways to address some of these issues, or at the same time mix it with development. So you pull it together with development. So that's what we are talking about. Otherwise, the alternative you're saying is that development shouldn't even take place because the place is green. Let's assume, so for government wants to carry out a development project, what is important is to strategically look at that area, see how development can take place while also trying to sustain the ecosystem there. And that's what is going on in quite a number of parts of the world, to try to see how the ecosystem is still maintained while development is also going on. To also ensure how the forest cover, the biodiversity is also maintained. You can ensure that, this place is a forest cover, let's create something that does not allow the monkeys to jump out. They still have their own vegetation around, but maybe we put a building and ensure that there's a cover and then it becomes a tourist attraction. So a lot of innovative thinking is going around the environment, but we cannot say that development should not take place because everywhere will be green. But we are also saying, I acknowledge the point, you have a point there you're making, that there are areas where people have invaded the green areas. But you also know that some of these areas, like I said, are the responsibilities of different agencies. Sometimes they redefine the environment, they redefine, and the place is dynamic. So they redefine it. If an agency redefines an area of development,
if you say
what's
that,
important is
if you say that it will hinder development if we don't allow government, use wetlands, or if you like, use green areas for all these developmental projects. Yeah. So what is the guarantee that this reforestation and all would not also increase poverty? Because in local communities where people should focus on farming or lands that should be used to farm, at the moment there's even tension at the moment with farmers and headers because of space and green areas and all of that. Yeah. So what's the guarantee this would not also complicate all of those issues?
No, what we are discussing here, we are giving an example. We are not limiting it to wetlands. You are talking of green areas. Yep. You understand? Now, if you come to a city, green areas will be under a particular agency. You could have an agency called beautification agency. The green area will be under them. What we are saying is that there will be nothing wrong in promoting development in an area which is intended to affect it. But you can define a development that sustains the stability, the environmental stability of that, while introducing something that also still maintains what that place is. I'll give you an example to say, look, you find an area where you discover that this area, maybe you used to birds, it's still a forest area where monkeys are moving around and all that, and we want to convert it to a tourist attraction. So you go in there, put in maybe a hotel or something that can house people, and then people come there, they sit and still see the environment, the nature playing out. You still plant trees around the place, and this is what is missing.
That's not the kind of thing we are even talking about. We are talking about total erosion of the green areas in place of buildings. I'm talking, look, it's close to us. When you live here, you could just take a close to FCDA here. Center, you know how you pave the Abuja roads. There's road here, there's road, and there's a wide, space in between, a demarcation.
Yes.
That very demarcation is where you have a filling station.
And a supermarket.
You have a supermarket just in the center of the road. Yes. So you're not talking about planting trees, or you are talking about housing it so that people can still see it. No. This is the kind of thing you see happen in Abuja.
Yes, this kind of things happen. That's not to say that government is not committed to environmental nature-based solutions, and all that, and that's why I'm also saying that while you observe this, it's important that we all, at every level, the various agencies work together to define some of these issues.
So,
you have
DG,
raised.
I'll ask you, what's the biggest driver of deforestation in Nigeria today?
The biggest driver of
Deforestation.
The deforestation today in Nigeria is not just government, because that's the perspective you're drawing to the table.
It's just a question, sir. I'm not drawing a perspective. I want you to respond and tell me.
The biggest driver of deforestation.
Yes.
Development is also is part of.
And who is responsible for that?
Government, of course, is involved in development at all levels. But we are saying that development itself shouldn't counter the ability to still promote climate action. That's the point we are making.
Yeah, of course, Professor Kereke talked about synergy.
Yes.
He talked about government agencies working in silence.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
Now, how much is Nigeria trying to work, to collaborate with other government agencies, and how much of education is in your work? The reason I ask is, if people don't know, they don't know the consequences of what they do. Even government agencies and people who run the government agencies may not have a sense of the consequences of their actions. So how much of education is in your work, such that when you keep talking to people, keep saying it, people see not only the immediate gains of, okay, a building rises here, a business place, we sell the land and all of that, to what happens in a matter of years to come.
Yes, education is part of our mandate. We carry out education at different levels, enlightenment on environment, in schools, on television, on radio. We have programs on radio. The traffic radio in the FCT every Tuesday, we do enlightenment on different aspects of environment. Is it noise pollution? Is it every Tuesdays? And then you go to Radio Nigeria, we have a program on every 1 o'clock every Saturday where we also educate. But it's also key, this education we do, it's important that this education trickle down to the people at the grassroots. Because that's also is key. And that's what Dr. Maduke is talking about. Can we drive it in our languages? We that are in the cities, that we understand these things to a large extent, what of those in the rural areas? Do they understand that these programs that we are doing on radio, we are doing on television and all that? So these are the issues. We have a lot of programs we are doing in terms of enlightenment on those programs, both television and all that we carry on as an agency. But like I said, we must be concerned with the fact that NESRA is basically, our major function is the enforcement of environmental rules, regulations, and to set standards for the environment. This is our basic
Which
space.
means you have to collaborate a lot.
Yes, we collaborate a lot. We define the standards and we work with agencies to ensure that they also maintain the standards. But this is not to say that we must enter every space. Sanitation is not our space, but we must educate and prepare the standard for that space for implementation.
You talk about regulations, and I'm wondering, oil and gas companies...
Except oil and gas. NESRA is not...
Okay, that's not your mandate. Okay, maybe I should get to...
Our mandate does not give us the oil and gas space. So these are the issues we are talking about.
Okay, so let's get to Professor Okereke. So I'm thinking, how do we solve all of this? Because, oil and gas companies, are big corporates and all of this, pollutants and all, and, global warming, of course, you want to point in that direction. Professor Okereke, if you can hear me, should oil and gas companies be required to finance ecosystem restoration in areas where their activities are being carried out? Or should it be voluntary? Or do you think that Nigeria at the moment needs to, maybe put in place stronger regulations and enforce it to the letter?
It should be both. There has to be. In fact, we already have an existing law that requires any company, not just oil and gas, that is employing over 50 people, to have a clear mitigation and adaptation plan. I wrote this into the Climate Change Act myself. In fact, the word I used was 250. They revised it to 50, which is very, very ambitious. But it is not being enforced. Around the world, I also know that there are many oil and gas companies that are voluntarily doing a lot of climate change solutions, nature-based, mangrove restoration, tree planting, watershed management. We have to have both. That's why my organization, the Society for Planet and Prosperity, will be rolling out in collaboration with Natural Eco Capital later this year the first ranking and rating of all the major oil and gas companies in Nigeria, including Shell, NNPC, Seplat, etc. We will be releasing for the very first time their ranking, how they are performing in climate change mitigation and adaptation, so that the world will see who is doing what, who is performing well and who is not performing well. And I'm glad to announce that the Nigerian Security Exchange Commission is partnering with us on this. And I would like to invite NESRA to join us. I have already sent a letter to NESRA. They haven't responded to me. Sorry to bring it to the air. But this is one example of where we can partner to ensure that we are working, that we are bringing various governmental agencies and departments to bring pressure to bear on the oil and gas company and the oil manufacturers to do something. You asked earlier whether Nigeria is committed. The answer, we shouldn't be over defensive, to be honest. Results know they lie. Dr. Nkiruka said we should speak some pidgin. Results know they lie. The result shows that 40% of our land today is degraded. The result shows that we are losing 62% of our forest to agricultural development, mining, etc., illegal logging. The results show that conflict between herders and farmers are increasing. The results show that more communities in Nigeria are suffering flooding. The results show that there are more illegal mining and that there are more problems with our groundwater in Nigeria. Whilst there are so many policies and pronouncements, I think we can agree that there is much more that can be done in terms of committed implementation and committed enforcement. This is not to say that it is easy. All countries struggle with balancing climate action with developmental imperatives, and much, much so for countries in the developing world that has limited capacity, but also including those that depend on oil and gas. We can admit that is a challenge, it's a problem, but we can also, say, come on, guys, we can do better. We can be more committed in doing this. So I think that there is so much room for improvement. Why? Of course, I praise the government for a lot of pronouncements. Nigeria was actually a signatory of the Santa Marta Memorandum of Understanding, saying that they want to phase down oil and gas over the next 20 to 40 years. Nigeria has a net zero plan and pronouncement. Nigeria has an ambitious NDC. Nigeria has a very robust climate policy. Nigeria has NESRA with Professor Innocent driving it. There are many, many good things to celebrate about our commitment, but there is also a lot that areas where we can do better. And I'm sorry I have to run to a different meeting, and it's been a pleasure having me. I hope the conversation can continue.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Okereke, for your time with us. We didn't know you are leaving so soon, but we appreciate your contributions to the program, and we wish you all the best in your later engagements. Thank you very much. So we'll pause here for a break, and when we return, the conversation continues.
All right, many thanks for staying with us. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NGA. Our guests are still very much with us, and of course, ready to respond to some of the comments that we have. So we'll just go right into it. If you want to still send a message, feel free. The number is on the screen. Send an SMS or a WhatsApp message. All right, so let's take a look at what we have so far. This one says tree planting should be encouraged from primary schools and also discourage deforestation. Estates should be encouraged to plant greens and reduce burning so as not to deplete the ozone layer. Buildings shouldn't be erected on waterways. Distortion of city master plan can cause environmental problems. Thank you very much, Engineer Sahid Tunde Adeyemi, a climate change advocate. Another one says, good morning. The fear of bandits using trees as hideouts or cover for their attacks has caused us to cut these trees indiscriminately. That's another angle to it, insecurity in all of this. All right, great, thank you. Another one says, this is a very good topic because it involves human life in line with good health and economic status. But many of us are ignorant about that. Immature trees are fell, including palm trees. Also, companies should be advised to do their part because they also contribute to climate change. That's Waya Gerald from Sukebulu in Delta State. I hope I got that right. Is it
Sukebulu, I think.
Sukebulu? All right. Another one says, good morning, NTA. In the way of adopting food security and ecosystem in the trend of climate change, how can rural farmers in northern Nigeria adapt desertification and drought? And how can the southeast and southwest mitigate crop loss from heavy seasonal floods? And what is the position of middle belts of Nigeria? Okay. I hope our guests can make sense of that question. Another one says, okay, construct streets, gutters, drainages, and canals ahead of rainy days, plant trees, forest protection ways, protect oceans with heavy stones at the edges to control its movements. Wetlands should be looked into by landlords, associations and governments. Farms should be protected by farmers and government. Landlords should be talked to fix their streets independent of government. Well, I mean, just a lot here that you have written. Pastor Ajashe Emmanuel, you're trying to prefer solution to some of the issues that have been raised as regards nature-based solutions for climate change. Thank you very much for your input. We appreciate you. All right, Victor, you have some?
All right, I have some messages here. And this one begins with, good morning, esteemed journalists. Climate change needs our preparations. We must always be prepared. First, our forests must be protected. Second, our farmlands must be protected from flood in order to prevent wasted efforts of our farmers' crops. Third, our streets, government and landlords associations should protect our streets from flood by putting our gutters and drainages in order ahead of rain times. Okay, thank you. No name. This one is from Engineer Said Tunde Adeyemi MNSE. In cases where people are discouraged from felling trees for firewood and cooking gases are very expensive, also hydrocarbon for CNG, there is no way poor masses won't go back to firewood due to poverty. Therefore, government must subsidize cooking gas and CNG. And from Nandom Wiep in Jos, nature-based solutions involve protecting, restoring, and managing ecosystems to address climate change. The work by sequestering carbon, reducing emissions from land degradation, and buffering vulnerable communities against extreme weather like floods and droughts. Now, these strategies provide vital co-benefits for biodiversity and human well-being. The most effective path forward combines shifting to clean energy, protecting natural habitats, and updating the way we build, travel, and eat. To the guests, thank you for your dedication. Have a good morning and God bless Nigeria. Thank you. And finally, this one is from Daniel Obot, PhD, former Director, Disaster Risk Reduction, NEMA. Now, good morning, dear presenters. Wouldn't have been appropriate to invite National Council on Climate Change for this discussion? Okay, wouldn't it have been appropriate? Well, you never know the people we invited and those who didn't come. I have seen in Bali, Indonesia, the application of nature-based solutions for climate change. There is interspersed
immediately because I spoke with someone from this part of the country. In Jigawa State, it is on record that the trees that are felled and charcoal produced are not really for Nigerians. They are for neighboring countries. In some neighboring countries, it is a crime to fell a tree. So what they do is that they depend on charcoal from Nigeria. So it's a big business in that part of the country, and it is causing problems for us. So what can we do? And of course, respond to some of these comments.
I'd like to inform you that Mr. President has, they just gazetted this against charcoal importation and wood logging. It's a crime to do that right now.
What's still going on?
It's going to be enforced. It's already, Mr. President has just approved that. and we are going to enforce it as soon as it's gazetted. Well, the government is concerned about that. The government is aware of that development and how far it's affecting the ecosystem. And so something is going to be done about that.
All right, so you want to respond to some of the other comments by our viewers?
Which I remember, the other was your contributions. And then
yes, basically.
Maybe which other, maybe one on drought. Was there anyone on drought? So, but I think the comments rotate around the fact that issues of drought, issues of flooding are things that if we also apply nature-based, so we apply nature-based solutions, we can address them at the level of government to ensure that roads have drainages, to also ensure that the drainages are not blocked. And then as individuals or human individuals in our various domains where our environments are also prone, we plant trees. When there's a combination of all this, we will be able to address some of these issues beyond the combination with all the engineering approaches. Which
you speak
is
passionately about the nature-based solutions, so I would like to ask if...
No, the reason why we're speaking about this is because this is a theme of the Environment Day this year. And I'm sure that's why you chose it. It's you that chose it, because the UN theme this year is
nature-based solutions.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Nkiruka, so I'd like to ask you, I hear that you're back and your connection is better. I hope that, it's not obstructed in any way this time around. So my question would be, if you had to choose between investing $100 billion, just an estimate, maybe more than that, in engineering infrastructure, or if you like engineered infrastructure or nature-based solutions, which would you go for?
Thank you again. I'm so sorry the network was bad. Permit me to just go back to the question I was being asked and then go into this. I'm going to combine both of them. I was trying to say that the government is doing a lot with regards to showing its commitment to climate change. The laws, the existing infrastructure, the existing institutions. But where we have the problem is that we forget as a people that governance is a two-way street. So that means we have a role to play. I don't know if I'm audible. We have a role to play in ensuring that government actually does what government says it's going to do. In the Western climes, the reason why environmental issues and climate issues have taken center stage is because it was people-driven, community-driven. Old women in Switzerland went to court to tell the EHCR, that the European Human Rights Court, that there was a need for the Swiss government to do them right by their climate change issues. Young people took the German government to court to say that you need to do better in your climate change. In our country, we can't see that happening. And that's where the disconnect is. Until our people start taking ownership of our story, until we start taking ownership of our narrative, and we start taking ownership of our development, we will keep on waiting and sitting and saying government should do what government should do, forgetting that government is a partnership, is a marriage between the people and the government. And so that's where we'll be able to get it right. And that's where the challenge has been for us so far. Then to your question of $100 billion, my goodness. Well, I would take it, I would put 40 billion in structural and 60 billion in nature-based. Let me explain. Taking my erosion and watershed challenge as an example. Because Nigeria has natural system, we're rich in natural system, it's important that we amp up on that, we push more on that. And so I will not put all the monies in structural, because that is just basically shooting myself in the foot. I will not put everything in nature-based either, because there has to be a balance, right? If you're talking about gully erosion cannot only be remediated by planting of trees. You also have to do serious deep structural works. You also have to be able to create very big size drainages like the ones I have seen, and be able to put up the civil earthworks. And so we're going to be able to, we should combine both the earthworks, the civil works, and the nature-based works, which is planting of trees, planting of vegetables. And Another thing I think the country should actually consider, and that's something that will really put us where we should be, is being able to have a regulation on the natural capital. Should we do that, I think that will bring our conversations from just being conversations to now reality. I think that is something the National Council on Climate Change should actually actively drive. How can we bring in activate the nature-based solutions that has been provided for in the Climate Change Act? How do we then bring it up as natural capital regulations? I think this will really bring it at the forefront. This will be my contribution. And to say that nature-based solutions, please, is not rocket science, is not complex, is just simple common sense. It means do not build houses on flood paths. Do not build houses on flood lines. Do not take green areas and decide to build shopping complexes. Do not build all your estates and give us concrete jungles. That they must be mandated. We have a town planning law. They must be mandated to ensure that at least a certain percentage, not even if it's 5% of the estates now being aggressively built in Abuja, that and of course we are having them now in Umahia, that a certain percentage is dedicated to green spaces for runoff, and also that people stop stealing the drainage, what do you call them? Again, going back to the people, the role of the people. People stop stealing those drainage things on the roads in Abuja, because you find that roads that were built maybe just 2-3 months ago, now that the rains have come in, we're dealing with flooding because somebody decided that they needed to pick up all those ions. So governance is a two-way street, and being able to address nature-based solutions is something that the people and the government must take seriously. The government still has a long way to go in making sure that this becomes not just a conversation but a reality. For me, a low-hanging fruit is actually operationalizing the section of the Climate Change Act, I think it's section 17, that talks about nature-based climate solutions, and also activating the natural capital regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Madwekwe. Now, let me get back to the DG. I'm just wondering, as an incentive, are nature-based solutions able to create job opportunities? Are they able to, engage the people? And the reason is, if these incentives are there, it makes it easier for them to, embrace them and get them to work. So what are the opportunities in nature-based solutions for the people?
Yeah, there are opportunities. I'll give you an example. In one of the states in the Middle Belt, in enforcing, trying to ensure that they reduce deforestation, we had reason to meet with the community, and a facility, a company that is working in that community, and there were complaints about deforestation. They are cutting down their trees and all that, and they complained, and we had to summon a community engagement with the company, and then we discussed on how this go, and we encouraged the company to pay the communities, the community youths and engage them in the planting of the trees. So they are paid, and we are glad that solution helped, because subsequently we have been in touch with that community, and it's helping to provide not just a convivial relationship between them and that business entity, but also providing opportunities for the youth. So it does create opportunity. Nature-based solutions provide opportunities in terms of employment. It provides opportunities for young people to be engaged in whatever nature-based approach that is being used. Besides, it also because it's also leveraging and providing a solution to the climate change challenges. It helps to also ensure that within the communities, provides them, like we were talking about providing cooking, like for women, where we talk about providing cooking gas for the program by the Federal Ministry of Environment. The argument is that, okay, women, when they get into the kitchen, the amount of smoke they take in is also even risky for human life. So these are all, it provides opportunities, a lot of opportunities.
If nature is part of the climate change solution, what single most important action must Nigeria take to protect the environment for future generations?
I think it's not just about government. That's the important thing. Because all of these issues also require behavioral change. It requires behavioral change in terms of...
I said Nigeria.
Yes. Individuals must change their attitude and behavior towards the environment. Just drinking water and throwing your bottle around doesn't help climate change. Getting to our markets, and then your markets are with heaps of refuse does not help climate change. So I think that the greatest thing we need is behavioral change.
All right,
Very,
many
very
thanks,
important.
DG. As we begin to round up the conversation, we have just about a minute left. So I'd like Dr. Madueke to, let us know her final words. Nigeria has no shortage of climate policies, action plans, environmental initiatives. What more do we need to do to get it right?
Like my brother DG has said, the people. So we as a people must start taking a front line on our narrative. We must start owning our story, like I said before. This is the huge gap that we're experiencing. And we cannot go to the COPs, do the negotiations, and then not bring it down to what it should be. So the people need to start taking an active step in ensuring that government does what government has promised that government will do.
Looks like that's it. But DJ, I'll give you 30 seconds. So speak to Nigerians about the environment.
I think that Nigerians must, Nigeria does not lack policies, as a matter of fact, on the environment. We also we don't lack initiatives of government. What I think we are having as a major gap is actually the attitude, behavioral change. And this is where all of us must converge. Once we converge at this level, I'm sure that quite a number of our environmental challenges will be something of the past, or at least we'll be able to mitigate quite a lot at the level of the climate change space. So behavioral change is key in all sectors.
All right. Many thanks, Professor Innocent Bariko, Director General, National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, NESRA. Indeed, it's been great having you as a guest, and we look forward to having you for more conversations. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. We'd also like to appreciate Professor Chukwumiri Okereke, who joined us via Zoom all the way from London, but had to leave us in the course of the conversation. And yes, Dr. Nkirika Chidia Madueke, the Special Presidential Envoy on Climate Change and the State Project Coordinator, Abia UMAP EIB. Thank you. And of course, looking forward to seeing you in Abuja soon. COP is around the corner. I'm sure you are preparing your bags already. All right. Thank you for being our guest. I'm Ian Ray John. Live locked on the NTA and take care of the environment.